Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Witness. Today, we're going to be talking about the greenhouse. But before we get into that, I wanted to mention something that we didn't talk about last time in the marsh, and that's this statue right here of this lady doing a painting. So, there's a reason I did want to talk about this in this episode instead of the other one. We'll get to it as we go along, but notice how the colors that she's painting with, red, cyan, blue, magenta, and yellow, are all the colors that were actually used in the marsh. You can see the cyan right there, red over there, the blue and the magenta. Actually, those areas are merged in that, and you can see they're actually merged here. Yellow is underneath the bluish green area. So all the colors are actually there. In this painting, it's very, very interesting that it basically fully represents this marsh area. Isn't that cool? I wonder why. You can also see that she's painting with the red, and interestingly enough, the red is what kind of takes over half of the area. But I wanted to start with that because talking about the greenhouse, we're going to deal with some stuff that isn't explicitly stated, I would say. It is a little bit more interpretive. You're going to find that a lot of the next areas, we have to do a little bit more interpretation and a little bit less facts. But I think for the most part, it's all pretty darn plausible. So you guys can be the judge on that one. But I want to start off with there. But this is where we are going to be talking about today, the greenhouse itself. So let's just get a nice little quick look at what's outside. You can see we got red, blue, and magenta as our colors on the top. We got basically every color known to mankind that's on the roof of the bottom area right there. And we got some fun stuff. We're going to talk about all of this stuff later. Let's jump right into the bottom of it. While we're jumping, I just want to let you guys know I am sorry that these videos are taking a lot longer than I was thinking on it. I really wanted to do this area justice, and I had made a couple videos before, and I feel like it just wasn't capturing everything. So I thought we may as well wait and make a fantastic video as opposed to putting out crap videos that really anyone could produce in 2 minutes. So sorry for the delays, but you'll probably be seeing it's taking about this long for most of the videos to come, as they are a lot harder. But enough about that, let's jump right in. So, the greenhouse. How do you start the greenhouse? So, the first thing is just getting right in here. And you can notice a couple things right off the bat. So, first off, this does look like it was a house. I wouldn't say that it was built as a greenhouse to start off with. It really doesn't look like it is. It's made of stone. Interestingly, this same material is what's used for the underwater areas of the marsh. So I do feel like they are connected, and we'll see why pretty soon. Also note that the doors aren't really doors. They are literally just blast marks in the wall. And then metal seems to be added on later. But our first problem is super, super easy. Literally, it's just making sure that we know that we have to... as I screwed up. Just making sure that we know how to separate two colors, the black and the white. And as long as we know that, life is good in the world. Notice that there's a blue background to start off with. And here is the greenhouse itself. So it's really cool. The first couple of problems, the reason I wanted to show the painting first, is look at the texture on these guys. You can see that it looks very, very similar to how people test out Petri dish cultures. Or I guess cultures in Petri dishes would probably make more sense. But you can see that it's also on a line grid. This is the only type of gridding this way that I have seen in the game that I can remember. So, and these type of grids are usually used to represent growth. So you can see in what conditions certain things are growing more or less than otherwise, and that's very similar for Petri dishes. I think that makes a lot of sense because you see that blue background, which is that scientific, just isolation background. But teaches you just a really simple lesson that doesn't matter if it's black or white or different colors, all the colors have to be separated. And, oh geez, if I know how to... I don't even know how to solve the basic problems anymore, oh boy. You can also see that the line color is white on this, which is interesting because white, in terms of light, is a combination of everything. Which is a little interesting because all of these problems are dealing with separating everything out. So some interesting stuff there. We'll get to that. The other thing I want to mention in this area is look at how these things are actually made. You can see that everything's closed off in them, so they actually aren't getting any light in this area. This is basically just seeing how they grow by themselves, no light, no anything. And it doesn't seem like they're really changing, does it? It looks like all the growths are about the same when there's no light added on to them. The other thing in this area, you can see that there is actually plants, which is, shockingly enough, why it's a greenhouse. Just keep them in mind. Keep them in mind. Also, keep in mind this pipe right here. This is an interesting pipe. We'll get to it pretty darn soon, but notice how it does connect right into here, and it filters, I'm assuming, some sort of fluid. But we'll see why pretty soon. You get some nice little dust on the background. But what's the next thing that you do in this area? Everything switches to gray. So we are dealing with different types of problems here, and you can see we got a crazy amount of colors. But the trick is you actually look at it through different lenses or different window colors, and you can see that now this is actually a solvable problem. The one thing that annoys me, I get why they did it, is that you can't actually select it through the glass. That's a little annoying, but you can see that it still works just perfectly if we use our memory skills. The second one deals with the cyan color, and then the third one, you actually have to combine not just cyan, not just yellow, but you have to combine them together and you get this green color, and that is what solves that problem. So interesting already that this whole area is about separating colors in the first little bit. But in the second bit, you're actually combining colors, you're actually combining stuff together, and finding the commonalities between it based on the light that you're seeing it through, which is pretty neat. We go up, and again we have that same style, this time with the color magenta. Oh, sorry about that, you guys. Just wanted to cut that out so you didn't hear excessive coughing. I am a little sick today, but that's alright. So you can see that we can open up this crate, and this is actually what lets you solve these problems. You're actually getting natural light, and natural light shows you the difference between the magenta, this blue, and the cyan color, which is pretty neat. And then on this one, you can see that there's just too many colors to deal with at all. So what do we have to do? We have to switch it actually back to magenta. And magenta is going to take this blue, the cyan, the red, the orange, the yellow, and it's going to separate them. So the red, orange, and yellow all turn into one color, and the other two stay separate. Interesting stuff. Again, we're going to be talking about why all of these connections are happening as we go on, so don't worry if you're not seeing all the connections yet. You will, or at least you'll see why I think they're connections, and you can judge it from there. Notice again that the pipes are continuing on along here, and they're actually running into these. That's weird, eh? But let's go down. So you can see we have some stairs over here, so we can get to the first couple areas of this level just by walking up the stairs. We have a, looks like probably metal area right here, which was initially the door to this area. We'll take a look at that after, but this is actually how you entered this room beforehand, was through this door, not through the giant orange crate. Which is interesting. So in this place, you can see the walls are actually, like, the floor is actually entirely bottomed out in this area. You could see beforehand this used to actually be just two separate levels. And then you would access them through this door. You'd be able to walk up the stairs, get to your second floor of this house. Again, I don't think this was a greenhouse initially. I do think it was some form of a regular house of some form. But you can also see that this stuff is all polarized, so you can see that the cyan color that used to be over there is now black because this glass is all polarizing with other colors, which is pretty cool. And last but not least, let's actually talk about the room we're actually in. So you can see that this is an entirely red room. It's being caused by all of the lights just right over here. Some of them are turned off. Wonder why. We'll find out. But you can see those pipes are also going into here, and they are actually sending liquid all the way through these. Or extracting liquid, maybe. Could be either, right? We will talk about it. We will talk about it. But the last part of the actual problems in this area, it's actually a pretty small area, is dealing with this elevator. And you can see that looks like a pretty simple problem right now. Nice and easy. Awesome. And so we get the first line by just changing that. Notice how, as we're going up, the colors are actually changing to reflect the environment. So this is all reflective type paints, which is kind of cool. Our second area is a magenta area, right? So when you're combining light together, the red and blue combine to make magenta color, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. You can also see that different sides are getting different amounts of the different types of light. So this area is basically getting almost all red light on this side. On this side, it's getting a little bit more. You can see that we're actually getting a lot more of the blue here, and it is actually changing the colors of the plants that are inside here. I think it's lettuce, but it could be anything. But I want to think it's lettuce, and they're actually growing a food source here for the rest of the island. But that's completely out of left field here. That there's no real evidence for that. But it seems like it could be. But you can see, yeah, that as you're going in, the color actually changes on these things. So when you get more to the blue area, the magenta and the blue color actually just kind of merge more so into it. And you can see that effect going on for different areas in here. Again, take a look that these pipes are still running through all of these areas, and they are still either providing liquid or extracting liquid from it. And we can access this area from the stairs if we wanted. You get to see the door. I think that this door was actually built when the original house was created, and you can see it's a almost identical style door to what we got in the marsh area. Again, just kind of reinforcing that those two areas were probably built by the same culture of people, I think would be the most correct way of saying it. But let's go up and take a look at the next floor. So you can see that that switches to that magenta color. And now we are going up to Blue Land. And blue is actually a little bit different than the other areas that we were checking out. First off, notice that it is polarized, so the red is not leaking in whatsoever in this area. This is just 100% pure blue. Also notice that these pipes in this one are still providing liquid / extracting liquid from them. And it's only flowers that are growing here. Again, nothing too crazy. Notice that the stairs are going up now, so we can't actually access the next area through the stairs. We actually have to use the elevator at this point. So let's see what's different about the next area and why maybe it is so separated from the rest of things. You can see again, switching to blue, nothing too crazy. But here we start getting the blue on the bottom still, and we get green on the top. So when you combine blue and green together, you get this cyan color. And notice that the pipes are still here, but at this point, look at how they are attached. You can see they're just attached by little hooks. So these plants are actually not getting / extracting any liquid whatsoever from them. They are just simply here, and yet they're still surviving. You can see they're peppers. So again, I like to think it's a food source. Makes some sense to me. But these plants are surviving without any form of liquid whatsoever. They are just right here, and it seems like this green light by itself is enough to sustain these plants to still be alive. You can also see that the colors, again, are affecting these plants, so when it's closer to the blue area, all the plants are turning more so blue. When you get that combination of colors, you can see that the bottom ones are more so blue, the top ones are going a little bit more green. But that's kind of neat. And again, you can see that it's entirely separated off, and cyan is actually even separated from the green. What's neat about that is the marsh was actually the same way. The cyan color was entirely by itself. There was no connection to it. which is kind of cool, until you used a man-made structure to be able to access it. But let's go to the next one. So, nice and easy, right? We can find out how to combine it. Oh no. Oh no, oh no. It is literally entirely cut off and green. This area is not actually able to do anything. So this is where the puzzle gets a little bit harder. You can see that there's two different colors, and we know that green's on top, so we have to figure out what this is going to look like when it has green light. And it turns out it's this one, because, as you will see shortly enough, it wants to change into... Come on, there we go. We're almost there. All of those change to green, and then there's just the one. Oh no, oh no. Sorry about the cut for that, but now we are back in, and so now you can see we're in the green room. And notice again that there's pipes all the way through it, and notice again that none of these pipes actually connect to these plants whatsoever. So again, these plants are not getting any form of liquid, or so it seems, yet they are still thriving and surviving. You can see it is polarized, so the blue isn't leaking in whatsoever. This area is entirely cut off. Notice that the top is not the same style as the rest of it, so this roof at one point used to probably be a real roof, but now it has been repaired by some other, again, we'll use the word culture to fix that up. You can see some fun stuff over here, but there is a very, very interesting audio quote, and this is probably one of my favorite audio quotes for the area. Let's listen to it.
As scientists, we realize that color is merely a question of the wavelengths of ethereal vibrations. But that does not seem to have dispelled the feeling that eyes which reflect light near wavelength 4800 are a subject for rhapsody, whilst those which reflect wavelength 5300 are left unsung. We have not yet reached the practice of the Laputans who, if they would, for example, praise the beauty of a woman or any other animal, they describe it by rhombs, circles, parallelograms, ellipses, and other geometrical terms. The materialist, who is convinced that all phenomena arise from electrons and quanta and the like, controlled by mathematical formulae, must presumably hold the belief that his wife is a rather elaborate differential equation. But he is probably tactful enough not to obtrude this opinion in domestic life. If this kind of scientific dissection is felt to be inadequate and irrelevant in ordinary personal relationships, it is surely out of place in the most personal relationship of all, that of the human soul to a divine spirit. Arthur Eddington, 1927.
Well, isn't that an interesting quote? So, at first glance, it really doesn't seem to fit this area all too much. It's really going against kind of your initial impression of the area, because very similar to the marsh, this is an area that splits up everything, right? So you got the different colors on different floors, you've got the actual mechanic of the puzzle is to separate different colors and different shades from each other. And yet, this one talks about if you separate everything and just try and observe it analytically, you're not going to get the full experience. So what on earth is actually going on here? And for that, I think we have to go up one more level. So let's do that, shall we? And you can notice again that it's green. And we're going up so you can see that this is actually built as an orange box right here. Or no, sorry, an orange box down below here, and it's all yellow from this point up. And yellow is actually associated with godliness beforehand, isn't that right? Also, what's really funny is that in this whole building, there is actually no yellow light ever, and there's no combination of red and green to make yellow light, because the red is on the bottom and the green is right at the top. So godliness is actually not in any of the elevator area whatsoever. And yet, what is the elevator color itself? The elevator color itself is yellow, and it has to go through all of these different layers, all of these different color layers, and it's what actually brings you to be able to get the laser. What's really, really, really neat is that when you use the white light on it, it takes you to the final area of this, which is to activate the laser itself. It turns to a white light up here. And what type of color does this laser produce? It produces a yellow laser. So this whole area, even though it doesn't actually show us creating godliness, which is interesting because godliness cannot be created, it has to just be there. There's no yellow light. And when you combine everything with the white light, which is a combination of all colors, that's actually what allows you to get this yellow laser to be active. What's really cool about this is when you see the paneling itself, the three colors that you see are cyan, magenta, and yellow, which are all the secondary colors of light. And once those are all combined, once you have all three of them, that's what actually gets your laser active. So this area is really, really about, as interesting as is because of the way it's built, this whole area is actually about combining everything together. And that's actually the whole purpose of this area. It's very, very subtle the way that they kind of, or not subtle, it's very interesting the way that they made this whole area to really look like it's separating everything, but really it's actually all about togetherness. It's about combining everything to get that feeling of godliness in there. A couple other things that I feel just reinforce this point. So this top area, like you're seeing, is red, blue, and magenta, and these colors are entirely isolated by themselves, which is neat because red and blue make magenta. Down here we actually have a combination of all of the colors. But what's really cool about all of this is when you look at the inside of the greenhouse, the colors that needed liquid are the red, the blue, and the magenta. The ones that didn't need anything are the cyan, which is made of green partially, and green itself. Those ones don't need any form of liquid to be able to survive. So this white light, this way of being able to see everything, this is what actually allows all of these things to live. You can see again that if you look at the colors of the actual glass, it's yellow, cyan, and last but not least, magenta. And what does that create? All combined, it makes this white light. White light allows that life to be able to continue on. And you can see that it doesn't actually connect to any water in here. So there's no liquid actually getting pumped in. So I've been talking a lot about liquid. I've been talking a lot about water. I've been talking a lot about living things in this area. And I feel like all of this gets to a bigger purpose. Oh, that's just a nice little frame with the tree. But all of this seems like it has a purpose like everything else in this game. And so we talked about the marsh, how everything was being separated and all of this stuff was being extracted. And it feels to me, just the way that these buildings are created, you can tell that they are the same architecture. You can tell that both of them actually had man-made structures, or different types of structures that were put in after the fact by what appears to be a different culture of people. Or maybe a different mindset of people, might be a good way of putting it as well. So it's really curious to me, is that you need water for red, blue, and magenta. And it seems like one of the main things that was extracted from the marsh area was this red thing. Red has been shown to represent life from the monastery area. We saw that it created those gargantuan trees. And it seems like red, that liquid red, is what's allowing life to be sustained in the red area, the blue area, and the magenta area. Green, on the other hand, just through its light source, is able to sustain the cyan and the green. It doesn't need any form of liquid to be able to sustain life in there. And white, just by itself, also does not appear to use any form of, it doesn't need to have that liquid anymore. So last but not least is, well, where are all of these living things coming from? And if you look into the basins here, look at what you're seeing, and doesn't not look like, it doesn't look like soil, does it, just by itself, because it all has different refractive qualities. When you look at it, you can see that the color actually changes. A better one to show it is right over here. You can actually see that the colors switch. There we go. This one's a lot better. You can actually see that those colors switch. So there's actually liquid that's in here already, and I postulate that this liquid is coming from the marsh, and the marsh is actually allowing these living things to start up, and they are testing how to grow life in this completely lifeless place. And you can see that there's now all of these trees around. We talked about in the forest area that probably was created at least partially artificially, just because of the way things are, the way that the forest actually is designed. And now we're seeing this marsh area where stuff is being extracted, where there's life. We're seeing this greenhouse area where this life is being grown, basically. And it seems like these areas are all starting to tie in together to make this whole ecosystem. The only other thing I really want to talk about in this area, we're not going to talk about it fully, is the color yellow again. But notice how all of the grass here is completely yellow. Notice also that that is completely yellow, and it looks like something is basically leaked out of it. And it leaks all the way down, and it actually keeps on going. If you go all the way down here, you can see that yellow actually is leaking down from here as well. And notice how it looks kind of like algae, and yet leaves are starting to grow out of it. So I think all of this is pretty good support that they are trying to grow life here, or were at some point trying to grow life here, and now maybe it's taken on a natural property. It's also pretty clear, I think, from the design of this, that this was not its intended purpose. You can see how much stuff was added, so you can see that those orange crates were added just to be able to allow you to traverse through the area. This elevator by itself was added in after the fact. You can see that their holes were not cut, they were actually just ripped, basically like exploded in. So I don't really have any theories on what the house was used beforehand. If any of you guys do, I'd love to hear it. I'm very, very interested in finding out more about this part of it. But I think that this is really a good, all of these areas combined are a really good indication of what we're going to be going to next. So the next place that we're going to be going to is the treehouse area, an area full of life. We'll talk about a lot more of it later. But I think having all of this knowledge of how this world is created, what the intended purpose is for these areas, is going to help us really solve / understand the rest of this whole place. So that is the greenhouse. I would absolutely love to hear your comments on it. This, like I said, this is one of my favorite areas in the game. When I first saw this area, I was super confused with it, and kind of just piecing it all together through it has literally just made me so happy. Like I said, I really wanted to do this video justice. I hope that I have, and hope that you guys have learned a lot of new stuff on this area. That is where we're going to end it for the day, you guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed the episode. If you guys did, please smash that like button. It's a huge help. Thank you guys for all the support. It's been actually just completely overwhelming seeing over hundreds and hundreds of views for something considering this YouTube channel has just started out. So thank you guys so much for the support. It is super appreciated. Sorry that these videos are taking a little bit longer, but like I said, I really want to make sure that this playthrough is doing real justice to this game, and I think that we're starting to really start understanding what this game is all about. So thanks, you guys. Have a great one, and I'll see you guys next time in another episode of The Witness.